Today's top story is a definition of why you don't go into rooms that have a lock on it. But before we begin, if you enjoy true crime stories or just scary stories in general, then I'd highly suggest you subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's all I do, and I upload once a week. And also a big massive shout out to all 300 of you guys that have subscribed to my YouTube channel. It really does mean a lot, and it does encourage me to keep posting. But with all that being said, let's begin. Taylor was a young woman who was born in August 1990, and you see, right from the days that she could walk and talk, she loved to play with instruments and also sing, and her parents would also encourage her to go sing and play instruments. But the one instrument that clicked with Taylor was the guitar. For some reason, her singing and playing the guitar was a click, and Taylor fell in love with it. And so from an early age, Taylor decided that she wanted to be a singer, and of course her parents were full in support with this. Fast forward where she would grow up in Ronsvalles, which is a small neighbourhood in Toronto, and thanks to the help of her parents and Taylor's exceptional voice, Taylor would get into a prestigious school, and that prestigious school was called the Etibicoke, and this is where Taylor would make up a stage name, Mitchell. And for a while she would do everything amazingly, and her life would just be perfection. And about into a year into her career, there would be some time where Taylor would have to herself, and she really had no work to do. And well, Taylor was an avid lover of the outdoors, and so she decided to go on an adventure to the Highland National Park, where she would go over there and hike. And if you don't know what this park is, it's basically just a massive park with loads of different places and many different hike routes that people could go on. Taylor and millions of other people would come to this place every year. So what happened when she went on this trip was truly horrifying. On a sunny October 27th, at around 3:02 PM, a couple by the names of Mike and Gail were hiking on the Highland National Park, and everything was going smooth until they got to a forested section of the hike where there were known to be some dangerous animals lurking around. And so they began to cautiously walk through this area until suddenly they saw something coming towards them. And as the couple were looking at what was coming towards them, they noticed that it was two coyotes just slowly walking. And so in a natural reaction, the couple were a bit scared because they didn't really know how the coyotes would react to their presence. And so they stood still and they watched the coyotes come closer and closer to them until they turned left and they began to walk in that direction. And well, there was a car parked in that direction which was belonging to a university. But before the coyotes came out of view, Mike quickly took out his camera and snapped a couple of pictures of the coyote. And just like that, everything returned back to normal until the couple began to hear the coyotes howling. And a couple of seconds later, after the howling, the couple heard a girl screaming at the top of her lungs. And so instantly the couple were on alert mode and began to follow the screams. And they reached to the car park where they originally saw those two coyotes go to. But at this point the screams of the girl stopped, and the couple began to get even more worried and were fearing the most. And so as they get closer and closer to the car park, they saw in the distance those same coyotes rummaging through something. And as they got even closer to the coyotes, making sure that they weren't making any noise to disturb what they were doing. And as soon as they could see what they were doing, they screamed. Because well, they were eating a girl alive. And due to the girl's screams before, other hikers from around the area came to the car park with the same concern of the couple. And these other hikers seen what was going on to the girl, and they managed to distract the coyotes to come follow them. And they managed to distract the coyotes all the way to the point where the authorities were called and when they actually got to the site. And well, Mike and Gail pointed out on how brave these coyotes were, because usually coyotes are quite fearful for anything bigger than them, and they would only attack anything bigger than them if they were in a group, and they would never usually attack humans unless the human attacked them, which made the couple suspicious on why the coyotes actually attacked the girl. But either way, the girl that was getting eaten alive turned out to be Taylor, and rescuers would take Taylor to the hospital. But as they were trying to take Taylor to the hospital, the coyotes would come running at them, and they almost had an attachment to her, and it took multiple men just screaming at the coyotes and just threatening it for the coyotes to actually budge and run away. But unfortunately, due to all that time was wasted and the fact that Taylor had lost so much blood, she would ultimately pass away. It is speculated that Taylor was wandering through the park until she saw coyotes coming towards her, and she must have seen them as not a threat, and she began to actually feed them. And again, this is speculation, but she must have done something to anger them, and that's when they pounced on her and she ran away. But they weren't done yet. They began to stalk Taylor through the forest, and when the couple seen the two coyotes coming towards them, it is speculated that they were only minutes away from finding Taylor and ultimately ripping her to shreds. And also at the car park, the couple had missed some details. For example, Taylor's car keys and other possessions were scattered around the area, which she most likely used to defend herself, but obviously she would fail. Florida is known for its beautiful sights and amazing people, but the place is particularly susceptible to what people call natural disasters. And while this natural disaster is quite fatal and can actually destroy an entire city, and in many cases it can be fatal to humans and lead them to lose their lives. And that's because most of Florida is built on top of limestone, which, if you don't know what limestone is, it's basically a rock that just dissolves really easily in water. And while Jeffrey, the main person in today's story, will experience this firsthand and will be on the end of the worst outcome that could happen to you if this disaster happened to you. So it starts on a cold February 2013. Jeffrey had just came back home to his house in Florida after a trip away, and he and his brother, instead of packing out everything from his suitcase, they would go straight to the local bar and have a couple of drinks and watch some sports. And for a while they would both enjoy each other's companies until it was getting late and both men decided that it's time to go home. Jeffrey's brother would ask Jeffrey that, "Can I stay over at your house, as I really can't be bothered to drive home in the night?" And of course his brother would say yes, and they began to drive off, and soon they would arrive at Jeffrey's house, where they would sit down in the living room and just chat for a while and then eventually go to bed. But this is where the story really begins. In the middle of the night, Jeffrey's brother woke up to a loud bang, and he jolts up from his bed and begins to look around for a minute, and he's just telling himself, what the hell was that? Was that actually in real life, or was that in my dream? Which then he conjure up to, yeah, it must have been a dream. And as soon as he lies his head back on the pillow, he hears his brother screaming at the top of his lungs. So quickly Jeffrey's brother would rush to Jeffrey's room, and as soon as he opens the door, his eyes widen and his mouth drops, because his room isn't there anymore. It was swallowed up by a massive sinkhole. And instantly Jeffrey's brother would try to leap in and try to save Jeffrey, but just as quick as he leaped in, he leaped back out, as the ground was just caving in with so much speed. And as much as it pained him to do it, Jeffrey's brother knew that there's nothing that he can do to save him, and he just ran out the house. The police would quickly arrive along with a rescue team, and they would search for hours of any sign of Jeffrey being alive in this vast hole. But unfortunately they would never find Jeffrey. They would put down equipment such as a microphone that was tied onto a line, hoping for any sign of Jeffrey being alive. And all this time Jeffrey's brother's pleading to the police, saying, "I swear I heard him shouting my name for help." But after the first microphone snapped off, they put down another microphone in order to see if Jeffrey's still alive down there. But again, due to the sinkhole getting bigger and bigger, the police and the rescue team knew that there's nothing that they can do, and Jeffrey must have just passed away. And eventually the hole would be filled in by the government with gravel. But 2 years later the hole would reopen, and it turned out the hole was 30 feet deep and 28 feet wide. So the chances of Jeffrey's body still being there is pretty low. Until to this day his body was never found. And I also believe there's a YouTube video of that same sinkhole reopening. So if you're really curious, you can just search it up. And if that video is not on YouTube anymore, just search up a sinkhole and tell me, what would you do if you were Jeffrey? A woman woke up from an intense nightmare where she saw her husband getting murdered by a mysterious machine. She quickly woke up and she was panting and sweating, and she turned to her husband, who should either be on his phone or at least reading a book, but he wasn't doing any of that. In fact, he wasn't even there. So the woman looked around and started shouting his name, which his name was Roger Miro, and she got no response. I'm presuming he went outside for a walk, or he's just gone to work. She just decided to get ready, as it was a Monday morning and she needed to get ready for work. So she got ready and she went to the kitchen to have some breakfast. But before she sat down and began to tuck into her food, she quickly looked around the apartment halls just in case he was talking to a neighbour. And well, as she was searching, she found no sign of him being in the halls. And after a while, she just chalked it up for him just going to work early. And it's not unusual for him to leave early for work, but it is unusual for him not to say goodbye to her. But again, she just reassured herself that he must have been late for work and must have forgotten. So she just ate her breakfast and then headed out to her job. A couple of hours later, she finished work and was heading back home. And when she got back home to the apartment, she opened the door. And when she opened the door, she was expecting her husband to come running at her, saying sorry, and just asking her how her day's been, and just trying to make up for the fact that he forgot to say goodbye to her. But as soon as she opens the door, she notices that the apartment's empty and nothing's been touched. And now she's beginning to get worried, because it's about 9:30 now, and her husband finishes at work at 5. And so now she's pretty scared, and she begins to run around the block of apartments and begin to ask other neighbours if they had seen her husband, which all of them say no, we haven't seen him. And which is then she finally decides that calling the police is the right idea. So the police came and they began to search the apartment building, and again they couldn't find anything until a neighbour who's just came back home at this point comes along and asks the officer what's going on, and the officer explains to the neighbour that, hey look, someone's disappeared and we can't find this person, and the officer would tell the person that we're looking for Miro. And that's when the neighbour's face changed from a normal stern look to a shocked look, and that's when the neighbour told the police that I saw him at 6:30 when I came back home from work because I forgot my wallet, and he was just walking around the hall, and then when he saw me he came up to me and asked me for a key to the trash room, which was locked in a lower level parking garage. And of course the police would be like, why would he need to go there? Which the neighbour then explained that Miro needed to go in the trash room because he thought that his phone was in the trash chute in the hallway of the apartment. So the police confused and said, okay, we'll go down there. And when they entered into the compactor room in the garage, they found a ladder on the side of the compactor, and the officer began to climb up this ladder, and as soon as he got to the top, he came straight back down and began to throw up on the side because in the compactor was Miro and he was deceased with major signs of trauma. And the theory goes that when Miro got the keys, he went into the room and then began to search the first floor. Before then he decided to climb up into the actual machine, and when he got to the top, he went inside the actual machine fully to really dig deep for his phone, and the machine must have started, which meant that his body would have been crushed by this massive machine. His death would ultimately be ruled as an accident. So that'll be it for today's video. I just want to say thank you to all my new subscribers that have subscribed to my YouTube channel. At the time of this recording, I think we're on 310 subscribers. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of you guys. And I cannot express how grateful I am because I've only just started this channel and it's been about 2 months and I've already gained about 300 subscribers. So once again, I just want to say thank you. But if you enjoy true crime stories or just a fan of scary stories in general, then I'd highly suggest you subscribe to my YouTube channel, as that's all I do and I upload once a week. But with all that being said, thank you for watching, and yeah, goodbye.